Good evening, Bill Wadman.
Good evening, Sandy Robertson. How are you?
Fine.
Today's episode is sponsored by Spinger. No, it's not actually. Shouldn't say that because they're not actually paying us.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
It's an association you wouldn't understand.
Exactly, these associations. Do you know what I mean, Bill?
Are you speaking of things that we associate with other things, like automagically, or are you saying, is this a football reference? I don't know.
Well, even this is funny, isn't it? These associations, do you know what I mean? I'm starting at this with associations being, I guess, easily interchanged with the word memory or
Oh, okay, sure, yeah,
um, these associations meaning these connective tissues
sure.
of our minds or our lives or experiences. These associations might be something to do with experience, shared experience, particularly, which is why I'm asking, do you know what I mean? The
Yeah,
question of
because
itself.
but what you're trying to say and what my associations would be might not be the same associations.
Right. And
Yeah.
like, do you see what I see?
Do you see what I see? See, I have an association with that song, apparently.
Yeah, me too. I have the same one actually.
Okay. See, we're sharing associations already.
Sure. And that also is something that is good for us to look at, isn't it? Is that we might share associations, but does that mean that we really understand each other?
Shorthand, aren't they?
Well, I'm wondering what kind of communication there can be when we don't bring association into our play.
Wait, say that sentence again.
I've no idea. It came out and then it's gone. But it was something like, what are these no, when our associations are aligned,
Shared. Yeah.
uh, does that mean that we really understand each other?
I think that that can lead to the misinterpretation that we really understand each other.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, communication is this thing that we have and that we do,
mhm.
that we prize, that we um develop, that we
Yep.
measure. We measure the capability of communication across different humans, also across different species, even. We're very
Yeah.
interested in communication.
The effectiveness or I guess all communication, all art is to some extent trying to take something that's in my mind and put it in your mind.
Sure. Anyway, it's also, these associations is also the title of Tino Sehgal work that was part of the Unilever series in Tate Modern.
Yeah. I
Um,
was gonna say that looks like the bottom end of the turbine hole.
it is, and these associations as a body of work was the first kind of live performance in that series of Turbine Hall, I guess, artworks. Often they're installations, but they're usually object based, aren't they? Whereas this was a kind of fusion between movement or dance, conversation, dialogue, performance, immersive theatre. It was
So
very
what was the point? I mean, from the photograph, it seems like a bunch of people standing around talking.
so. I mean, I can just speak from my own experience of it. Actually, I was there in 2012 on a school trip, and I was standing with a couple of my students, and I was not aware that this body of work, or this piece of work rather, was being performed. And suddenly I was very aware that people in the turbine hall were moving, not like a flash mob. It wasn't it wasn't as obvious as that, but there was definitely a kind of rhythm or a kind of coalescence or kind of like a murmuration
Were
around this
were
space.
there instigators in the crowd? You know what I mean? Or
Yes, so
okay,
there are performers embedded just amongst visitors.
okay,
But the reason why I'm using that that term murmuration is it was as if they had a kind of unison in their movements, and then they would break away and they would become individuals and they would be like sleeper cells amongst us.
Sure.
And I was approached by a young woman who put her hand on my, or I mean, I might be misremembering this, but as far as I remember, she put her hand on my arm and the other hand on my back, and she started speaking to me very intensely and intimately about an experience that she had had on a train that was very distressing for her, very disturbing experience that she had had. And in earnest, she communicated with me. And again, my memory tells me that I reached my hand out and I grabbed hold of her arm and I looked into her eyes, and it was as if it was, it was like looking at oneself from outside, but realizing I was in the moment of what felt like a pure communication. I, of course, knew by this point that it was performance. I don't think the two students with me realized what the hell was going on.
Do you think her story was performed, or do you think it was tell an intense story about yourself as the direction? You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure if that is even important.
Yeah, I was just curious.
No, I mean, I know, but I'm looking at whether
Yeah.
it's of value to say that what I was told was the truth.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Um,
Well, that's a bigger thing, but okay.
no, but that is also the thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? So the
Yeah.
association for me was, here was a woman who'd experienced a sexual assault, sexual violence on a train, um, traveling between, I think, Berlin and Munich, and she was telling me about it. And it didn't last very long, this confession. I'm going to rephrase that. It wasn't a confession. It felt as if it was so simple. I described it yesterday when I was speaking about this as a gift. She was giving me a gift because it was like she looked at me and she realized that I would be the right person to hear that.
Hmm.
I would be the right person to tell that to.
You were special.
And of course, I know that's not actually the case
Sure,
because,
sure. But I mean, for the purpose of our conversation, it's like, yeah,
yeah,
it had to be you.
yes, it was as if she found me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've read reviews subsequently of these associations as a piece of work. And almost everybody who's written about this, a critic in The Guardian, for example, feels very similarly about the experience that he had. I can't remember what the person told him or
Sure.
shared with him, but had a lasting impact on him.
Sure.
And that is, I think, to do with association and also this need we have to meet each other, or many of us have that need.
Yeah. It's a less theatrical, more highbrow version of Sleep No More or something.
Well, that's what else I've got. I think you must have seen the slide, didn't you?
No,
So,
I didn't, but I've been to Sleep No More, so.
yeah, well, for me, I went to
Whoa.
the Burnt City, which
Okay.
was at Woolwich Barracks in East London, and it was um immersive theatre. I've spoken about it, I've spoken about Punch Drunk before on our little show. Immersive theatre is a bizarre it's a bizarre thing because I think the question for the audience member is, am I really participating in this? Do I give direction at any point in this? The answer, of course, is no, but my presence does have a place there. It's an odd
Sure.
feeling of connection, disconnection, connection, and disconnection. And association, or these associations that I might make through the communication of ideas in the format of theatre, immersive theatre, performance, dance, something that's very physical, um, seems to have a great power to it, more than, for me, more than something that's purely visual.
More than something that is traditional theater, say, where there's people speaking on stage and they're talking to everyone, not just to you.
Well, there's a moment at which one believes oneself to become the thing.
I don't know if the one you went to had the same sort of one-on-one things that Sleep No More does, where certain people just kind of get pulled aside for these sort of moments with cast members.
Mm.
Um, but those, it is funny. It's like I have had 5 minute chunks of things with somebody I've never met before and will never meet again that to me feel otherworldly,
Mm.
you know. And I know that they may perform that identically with 10 people a night, but mine felt different than theirs, in my
Yes,
head at least. Yeah.
and does it matter that, I think some people have a real problem with it somehow not being truthful, but that suspension is important
Sure.
so it can be shared. And
But I
actually,
mean, yeah.
it makes me question whether something that we think is truthful, an exchange, a communication exchange between close friends, for example,
Yeah.
there's no more truth in that than participating with a stranger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if I say bring up your first love, everyone had a first love, you know. Um, but they're probably not all equal. You know what I'm saying? Like if I say first love, you come up with something that is your imagination of first love. Maybe that was a positive thing for you and a negative thing for me, or maybe it was yours was one kiss at a summer camp and mine was a 6 year relationship through high school and college or something, right? Um, but we still have this shared Venn diagram of what a first love is in the middle, which is it's interesting because the details are different, but the story remains the same.
Hmm. I'm still pushing for do you know what I mean? How can you know what I mean?
I Well, you can't.
How can I make you
But
understand?
okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna flip it on you. Maybe you can't, but does it matter?
Hmm. But aren't we constantly
If I
looking?
think I know what you're trying to do, isn't that the best we can do?
Aren't we constantly looking though to really reach each other?
To verify?
Mm. But also, isn't this the lifeblood of being human?
Maybe the ambiguity is also the lifeblood of being human.
Fine. But when you quiz people on this, they can become quite worried, disturbed by there
Hmm.
being this sense that, what we're really saying isn't actually maybe what they might think truth is. Because for me to try and make myself understood by you, I have to give you association.
Hmm.
You have to be with some kind of memory.
Yeah. I for a long time in my life, I have had the idea that there is some correct truth, and lately I've become far more subjective and wishy-washy about it, and it makes me very uncomfortable.
Wishy-washy, you.
Yeah, and I don't like it at all.
Oh, wow, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
We're both artists. We are maybe giving the gift of story to others,
Hmm.
but really, we have a great expectation on our audience that they can associate enough with what we show them that they can understand what they see.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that I do more now is probably more like this.
Yeah.
or like this. It's about being something that might not be what I actually perceive myself to be at all, but is kind of like a supplementary person, a kind of proxy.
Is the I don't know, ephemerality of that mode versus creating an object satisfying to you? Does that make
Uh,
sense?
it does. I think because I can't return to it apart from in my memory,
yeah,
it becomes itself again and again quite easily. And I don't need to feel any regret ever about something I have made. In that, it's kind of like it's kind of like an insight. I can't choose to have an insight, and I mustn't hope to hold on to the insight, but I can trust that insight, once it has occurred,
hmm,
is me. And it's the same with this way of working, this kind of part performative, transpersonal shadow work that I
sure,
do is kind of like, each thing is a kind of gift of insight. Even if it's not me, even if it's someone
yeah,
else comes up upon something, I know then I have to go back in my memory to look at it. But I feel that whatever has happened lives in me. So in that sense,
sure,
it's satisfying, but I'm not seeking to be satisfied by it.
yeah. But then it's like you say, it's in the past, and it's you can let it go.
You let it go, and also, I mean, nobody records me. There's no record.
We're not recording this. There's no record of this.
This we record.
Oh, I see.
I think this is this is that light. It's not this thing that we do is dialogue, it's discussion, it's two friends talking.
Hmm.
But yes, I'm planning in advance what we'll speak to, but I'm not becoming something else, as far as I'm aware,
Yeah.
in
You
order
know,
to
it's
facilitate this.
sure. It's funny though that the association is a game people play too, right? What does this make you think of? And then you say that, and what does that make them think of? You know what I mean? Sort of a telephone kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's, but that, I mean, that has almost a life of its own. It's alive. Yeah, there you go.
Mm.
Every once in a while, the Krishnamurti gets it right.
Oh, I'm sure that he would be delighted to know that you think so, Bill.
Well, I'm just saying. Some of the time, I agree with him.
Oh, well, then that's the object, isn't
Well,
it? These
it's
associations.
yes, I guess it is.
Hmm. But the thing that I'm looking at in this is where there's no accumulation in the
Yeah,
movement of learning. It's kind of what you were just asking me, or I was in a very bad way trying to give back about the work I do as an artist now is a
yeah.
performative dialogue.
Wait, now in this sentence, do you read movement as in the civil rights movement or the movement through space?
I think it implies action.
Yeah, but both imply action. One is personal and one is community.
What personal.
Well, it's a movement like it's my going from point A to point B versus
I'm reluctant to batten down the hatch on this really because
sure
I don't I don't suppose that's the point for me. The
of
point
this of the sentence.
of any of this,
Okay.
I'm choosing to be vague. I
I
think
see.
being vague is okay.
All right, I'll get you offline. I'm gonna find out what you think about that word movement. But okay.
No, no, it's not that I am reluctant to tell you what I think. It's that I genuinely know, I know that what I think is not it.
Yeah.
Not what I think. That's the whole point of this, isn't it? My movement is not mine. I'm not describing this as a collective, but nor am I going to limit it to me. Learning is a constant process. Who's the learner?
Yeah. So if there's no accumulation, what are you learning?
But if there's no accumulation, can there be any association?
If there's no accumulation, can there be change?
I mean, this caused a lot of consternation in the dialogue group actually,
Hmm.
because um, it got to the point where we had to rein it back in from people talking about, well, if I had no um process or accumulation, I would have no knowledge, and then I would be like a baby and I'd be unable to speak and I'd be and so on and so on.
Hmm.
And I understand why that's something that comes up quite fearfully in this. And in anything where we're discussing association and how we might choose to observe ourselves constructing our narrative to align, to sort of try to make ourselves belong somehow, all these things that are ultimately quite separating, ironically.
Well, giving our lives meaning, being individuals, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm. But the associations we have, Bill, are they intellectual?
They're emotional, I think.
Mm.
I think they're pre-intellectual. They're pre-conscious.
But again, the start question, do you know what I mean? Can you see what I see? How can I make myself understood? These are the big
Do you
questions.
see green the same way I see green? Man.
Don't be so boring. Um, but here we are thinking that we speak easily as friends,
Hmm.
and we are each hanging our hat on the other's method of delivery, our mode of communication. But really, what we're doing is we're trapped in our memory through association, so that we come to navigate what we think is each other, but is really just
Navigating ourselves.
ourselves.
Hmm.
Are people really going into this at all?
In their own minds, in the world.
Are people really looking at this?
I think that, I spending a lot of time with friends lately and talking to them about different personal topics, and you get other people's insight into something, and you sometimes are annoyed or offended or surprised by something somebody else says, and at least I often take these things personally. And lately it's just I need to put a heaping thing of 60% of what they're saying is just based upon their own experience and their own way of feeling about it if they were that person, not anything to do with me, right? Um,
Isn't it so that, if your pain were my pain
yeah.
and your suffering were my suffering and your joy were my joy and blah, 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 that you would think and feel and do exactly as I think and feel and do?
Do you think that's true?
Yes, I do. I think the ego doesn't like that.
So you're programmed by your experiences in an objective way.
Mm. Trust you to make this so automatic. Um, I'm programmed.
But that's, I mean, what you're saying is that, the given X set of inputs, you're always going to get the same output.
I resent this.
You're like, it's not nearly woo woo enough. Um, I don't know if I agree with that though. Well,
Well, hang on a second. If I think it really is an ego issue when we meet another or we hear of another and we hear of their actions and we judge them.
Yep.
And, I really have to catch myself on with this. I am certain that somebody I judge who is being somehow challenging over there
Yep.
is arriving at that challenging behavior because of a series of circumstances.
Sure.
And if I had the same series of circumstances and I had their same archetype in history, I would be them.
Does that remove free will? Is there no wiggle room of thought in there?
I don't think it
Your
like
your 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 theory is very reactive, I guess is what I'm saying.
no, it's not. I don't think it is reactive. I think the thing that's reactive in it is the ego battling itself, saying, I wouldn't be like that. I would never
Right.
hit my child. I would never cheat on my wife. I would
Right.
never, these things that we say uh, because we associate with ourselves maybe a sense of goodness or being better or something. And it's nonsense because if we are
But
with that person, we had everything that they've had going on for
yeah,
them, we would be the same as them. It's like a riddle. It's like a nonsense riddle.
sure. But it's also interesting that you're saying is that, if we have that sort of empathy for other people, sort of a form of empathy about that in itself is sort of a form of association, isn't it?
Sure, but I now really I really want to get to whether association can be understanding.
Hmm. I think it might be the closest we can get, but it is not. Yoko Ono is really frustrating to me
Oh,
because there are things that, especially in her early career like this, that I've seen that I think, oh, that's a neat idea or a neat concept or like good on them for coming up with that. But my God, her music is terrible. But this stuff's really good.
well, I mean, I also personally, I have to say, do not like listening to Yoko Ono singing.
Yeah.
It just sounds so alien.
Does anyone?
But isn't that maybe what isn't that maybe what she's going for?
You think so?
Maybe.
I don't know. Let's
I
get her
mean,
on the
she's a
horn.
very, very intelligent woman
Sure.
who also has got a lot of musical training in her life.
Yes.
But I mean, this is from Grapefruit, which was published in 1964. There have been subsequent editions. The original one was split into, I think, five categories. I've got to,
By the way, can I just say that the 1950s, 60s, well, 20s through 60s art that were written pieces on a typewriter, there's
yeah.
something about them that just makes me happy. I don't know what it is. There's like some level of simplicity to them, you know? It's like when you go to the Tate or you go to MoMA or something, and it's like some type sheet on the wall that describes some artwork that you're supposed to do with you and your friends, and like and it only happens once in that space, and blah 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 blah. And you just look at it and you think somebody put a piece of paper in this typewriter, and just bang 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 bang, and this is the thing that came out, and it's just I don't know, it's very satisfying. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that just makes, I mean, this is me associating now. So you've told me something and I'm telling you something. And this is how it goes, isn't it? Upwards and
Yeah,
upwards into the apex of our
into
so-called,
insight.
yes. When I was little, my grandmother, who had been an extraordinary stenographer,
Yeah.
she was amazing, extraordinarily fast and accurate. Anyway, she also taught me to type as a child. And we had typewriters that faced each other on either side of my grandfather's old naval desk. And she had an electric typewriter that was
Yep.
thrilling in its wizardry and whizzing about and ting, ting,
Zip
ting.
zip 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 zip.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then I had a smaller manual typewriter.
Kerplunk kerplunk kerplunk.
Oh my goodness. The two of us used to have writing competitions, poetry, typing, you know, races, we all sorts of things, my grandmother and I really the sound of a typewriter and as you described, the look of the type
Hmm.
is something my association
It's
with it
different than a printed piece,
is so warm and happy and
which
some
is odd because 150 years ago, somebody would have said the exact opposite, that having a machine that is type writing words has no warmth in it. And that's part of the problem, right?
mm,
Associations change over time.
they do, but also look at it, it's like passing a baton.
Sure.
The baton has gone like this evening. We've reached Yoko Ono and Beat Peace from Grapefruit. You have started by saying that Yoko Ono sounds terrible, and I aligned with you. The baton was passed and then passed back because you started to tell me that the look of the type looks good.
Hmm.
And then baton back to me goes to my anecdote about my grandmother and I at the typewriters facing each other on the old naval desk. And somehow we've moved into a complete chain of association. And that is what our communication is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Association.
I think when it's going well, yes.
Is it? But look at that, Bill. When communication is going well and we're passing a baton, what are we really doing?
We are becoming one mind.
Are we, or are we staying very much as two minds?
We are mind melding to an extent that both of us feel like we are doing something together for a time.
I'm not sure that's true.
You don't feel that way when you talk to me?
No, I don't.
Bill gets put in his place once again.
No, I'm just saying. I I think that communication, ironically, is the greatest separator.
Hmm.
And I go back to Tino Sehgal for a moment, and I remember things that made this very important. And one of them was actually the fact that the woman touched me. Now,
Yeah,
I don't know if that's part of the program. I've tried very hard to find out actually if they were supposed to touch their
I was going to say.
victims, but she did. And I think there's something in that. We spoke a couple of sessions ago about touch, haptikos. When I'm not speaking is when I'm free to to be with you.
Yeah. The music is in the space between the notes.
Indeed, and I mean we'll come back to the last one again. You will know that, Ono, though she didn't attend his classes, was very influenced by John Cage, or one
Yep.
could say that she was. And the whole sort of conceptual art movement owes a debt of gratitude to Cage's experimental music classes in Manhattan in the late 50s. But, you know, communication is divisive, it's separating when it's about our languages, which can be about our cultures, which is
Our
then
accents.
rooted in all this other stuff.
But what is the alternative then?
Well, I mean, I guess, it's rather irritating to me and the way it's described. We need to hold space for each other. Silent retreats are on the rise.
Ah, you're go. See, now we're going to woo woo. This is good stuff.
But really, maybe we should go in.
See, but to me, I think that the shared experience of those experiences is even more in our own heads than how you describe our associations the way we think they are.
Yoko Ono thought that a grapefruit was a hybrid fruit between an orange and a lemon.
Okay,
And that's how she saw herself. She saw, it was a kind of spiritual hybrid.
sure. I don't think that's true, but okay.
No, no, I know, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Boy Scout alert. Bring, bring me a badge, quick.
Mr. Liberal over here, or
Ah,
literal.
anyway. Communication is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Look at you aligning with me. Oh,
Well,
our associations, Bill.
every once in a while, we end up on the same corner of the same block.
It's most infrequent. Bye,
And the
Bill.
world's better for it. Goodbye, Sandy.